The forest breathed around Elias, a symphony of rustling leaves and the distant caw of a crow. He'd been tracking a particularly elusive stag for days, lured deeper and deeper into the ancient woods of the Pacific Northwest. Elias, a seasoned hunter, felt an unease prickle at the back of his neck, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his youth. The air was heavy, stagnant, and the usual chatter of squirrels and birds had fallen silent. He paused, his rifle held loosely in his gloved hand, and scanned the dense undergrowth. The stag's tracks were still fresh, but something felt wrong, terribly wrong. He considered turning back, but the thrill of the hunt, the primal urge to conquer, urged him forward. The sun began to dip below the towering pines, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like phantoms. Elias pressed on, his boots sinking into the soft earth. He rounded a bend in the game trail and stopped dead in his tracks. The stag lay dead in a small clearing, its throat ripped open. The sight was gruesome, but it wasn't the kill that froze Elias's blood. It was the prints, enormous, undeniably primate, and unlike anything he'd ever seen. They were pressed deep into the mud, each print easily twice the size of his own boot. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Elias's bravado. He knew the legends, the whispers of Sasquatch, the hairy giant said to roam these woods. He'd always dismissed them as folklore, campfire tales meant to spook tourists. But the evidence before him was undeniable. He raised his rifle, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had to get out of here. Now. He turned to retreat, but a low growl stopped him in his tracks. It was a sound that resonated deep within his bones, a sound that spoke of immense power and primal rage. He slowly turned back, his rifle trained on the edge of the clearing. The shadows seemed to writhe and coalesce, and then it stepped out. It was massive, easily 8 feet tall, covered in thick, dark hair. Its eyes, deep-set and glowing with an eerie intelligence, locked onto Elias. The creature's face was a grotesque parody of a human, with a heavy brow, a flattened nose, and a wide, snarling mouth filled with yellowed teeth. Elias stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. This was no bear, no man in a suit. This was something else entirely, something ancient and terrifying. The creature roared again, a deafening sound that shook the very ground beneath Elias's feet. It took a step forward, and Elias finally snapped out of his paralysis. He raised his rifle and fired. The bullet struck the creature in the chest, and it staggered back, roaring in pain and fury. But it didn't fall. It swatted at its chest, its massive hand easily deflecting the bullet. Elias fired again and again, emptying the magazine. Each bullet struck home, but the creature seemed barely affected. Elias knew he was outmatched. He dropped the rifle and turned to run, his legs pumping as fast as they could. He crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at his clothes and skin. He could hear the creature behind him, its heavy footsteps pounding the earth. He stumbled and fell, sprawling on the ground. He scrambled to his feet and kept running, his lungs burning, his muscles screaming in protest. He glanced back and saw the creature gaining on him, its eyes burning with predatory hunger. He knew he couldn't outrun it. He had to find a place to hide. He spotted a narrow crevice in a rocky outcrop and dove into it, squeezing himself into the tight space. The creature reached the outcrop and roared in frustration. It clawed at the rocks, its massive fingers tearing chunks of stone away. Elias huddled deeper into the crevice, his body trembling, his mind racing. He could hear the creature pacing back and forth, its heavy breathing filling the air. He knew it was only a matter of time before it found him. He closed his eyes and braced himself for the end. Hours passed. The sun set and the forest grew dark and silent. Elias remained hidden in the crevice, his body stiff and aching. He didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe too loudly. Finally, as the first rays of dawn pierced through the trees, he heard the creature move away. He waited for what felt like an eternity, listening intently, before finally daring to peek out of the crevice. The creature was gone. Elias slowly crawled out of his hiding place, his body weak and trembling. He was covered in dirt and scratches, his clothes torn and bloodied. He looked back at the clearing, at the dead stag, at the enormous footprints in the mud. He knew what he had seen. He had faced a legend, and he had survived. He stumbled back towards the trail, his mind reeling. He had to get out of these woods, had to get back to civilization. He would never hunt in these woods again. The journey back was a blur. He walked for hours, driven by adrenaline and fear. He finally reached his truck, parked at the edge of the forest, and collapsed into the driver's seat. He started the engine and drove away, not stopping until he reached the safety of his cabin. He locked the doors, drew the curtains, and sat down in his armchair, his body shaking uncontrollably. He spent the next few days in a daze, reliving the encounter in his mind. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. He knew that no one would believe him. They would think he was crazy, that he had imagined it all. But he knew what he had seen. He had looked into the eyes of a monster, and he had lived to tell the tale. He eventually started to recover, but he was never the same. He became withdrawn, paranoid, always looking over his shoulder. He sold his hunting gear and never set foot in the woods again. He tried to forget, to bury the memory deep within his subconscious, but it was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to resurface. Years passed. Elias grew old, his hair turned white, his body frail. He lived a quiet, solitary life, haunted by the memory of the creature in the woods. One night, as he lay in bed, he heard a sound outside his window. A low growl, a sound that resonated deep within his bones. He knew what it was. He closed his eyes and waited.